Listen to this man in England. Is he the bravest man in the world?
Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, which prompts me to say something that I've been meaning to say for a while. And obviously I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but I would like to clarify something for all you people who are too stupid, prejudiced, or just downright ignorant to see it for yourselves. No offence. Anti-Semitism hasn't been a major problem here in Europe since the war against the Nazis, but now, suddenly, it is again. What could be the reason for this? Anybody want to say? Nobody ever does. Even I don't really want to say what it is, but I will anyway. It's mass Muslim immigration. Any Jew in Europe today who favours mass Muslim immigration must either be incurably progressive or just plain out of their mind, which actually amounts to the same thing, because Jews are being driven out of Europe by Muslim anti-Semitism, and the rest of us are letting it happen because we don't have the courage to confront it and call it what it is. Given the way that Jews have been treated historically in Europe, to call this behaviour cowardly and reprehensible doesn't come close to doing it justice. Those words are merely polite euphemisms for the moral depravity of what's actually happening. Politicians are now starting to pay lip service to the problem because they've got no choice, saying things like, we must do more to stop this wave of anti-Semitism that we can no longer ignore, even though we'd love to. We must do more, but we won't because we can't even bring ourselves to name the problem in case somebody gets offended. Sorry, Jews. People often say to me, you know, not all Muslims hate Jews. It's Israel they hate. You're just a racist. Well, of course, not all Muslims hate Jews, but crucially, the religion of Islam does hate them. It's right there in the scripture, which was around long before the State of Israel was ever thought of. And given the seriousness with which Muslims tend to take their religion, it's inevitable that many of them will hate Jews simply for being Jews, and the evidence is that many of them do, which is why every anti-Israel rally that's full of Muslims quickly turns into an anti-Jewish hate fest. Pointing this out does not make me or anyone else a racist. However, denying it in the face of the evidence does make you a coward and a liar, especially if you call yourself a journalist. Islamic scripture tells Muslims to look forward to the day when they wipe out the Jews. Not Israelis, Jews. And that's why that particular hadith has been incorporated into the founding charter of the Islamic terrorist group Hamas. It's also why Islamic terrorists always make a point of seeking out Jews and killing them first. Not Israelis, Jews. Last year, in Gaza, there was a tragic, unnecessary war because the people of Gaza had freely elected this terrorist group of Jew haters, knowing that they would repeatedly attack Israel and knowing that Israel would eventually retaliate and that many people would be killed. That either takes a special kind of stupid or a special kind of hate. And it's a hate that's endemic in the Islamic world, where opinion polls tell us that a majority of people hold opinions about Jews that don't belong in a civilized society, yet we in Europe are busy importing this mentality wholesale as part of our multicultural rainbow coalition of suicidal stupidity and moral cowardice. What could possibly go wrong? Well, 4 people dead in a Jewish supermarket is one thing that could go wrong. Jews abused and attacked on the streets of European cities while the authorities make excuses for their Muslim attackers, armed guards on Jewish schools, Muslim mobs attacking synagogues, and a mass exodus of Jews from Europe is what could go wrong. In fact, it's already well underway. The number of Jews leaving France for Israel is doubling every year. And this will continue all over Europe because we don't have the courage to confront this thing or even to call it what it is. I know we've been beaten down by political correctness and relativism, but does anybody actually have a conscience anymore? Or is that just an old-fashioned idea now? Islam has brought many ugly things to Western society, and this wave of anti-Semitism is just one of them. But it's one with a very sharp edge, and we have a responsibility to dull that edge and to flatten it right out, because we cannot have this in our society and call ourselves civilized or free. And the first thing that we need to do about this new phenomenon in Europe of Muslim anti-Semitism is to call it what it is and to hell with anyone's feelings. It's Muslim anti-Semitism, isn't it, Muslims? You know the truth. It's Muslim anti-Semitism, politicians, not anti-Semitism generally from some vague, unspecified mystery source. It's Muslim anti-Semitism, journalists, mandated by Scripture, and you'd better write that down in case you forget, because you will. It's Muslim anti-Semitism, progressive Jews, not the far right, as you would love to believe. And the bad news is, it's coming for you. And when it does, nobody will do anything about it, because that might be racist.
This guy, I believe, is the bravest man. Wait until he hadn't even gotten started on. We'll come back in a minute. I want to play what he has to say about. Well, it has nothing to do with Islam. These attacks have nothing to do with Islam. And you tell me if this isn't the bravest man alive on planet Earth today. And he's saying it without hate. He's just stating a fact. He is the bravest man in the world. And I think courage is contagious. I think you start to listen to this guy and you say, you know what, if he can say it, why can't I? Because he's saying what many people are thinking, but they are terrified of saying. And they're terrified, why? Because they're going to be killed by Islamic extremists? They're going to be smeared in their own circle by the press or by the elites? More likely. Or they're going to be targeted by the government. Most likely. I think this guy's biggest enemy will come from the state. How will England deal with a guy? Now, he's been saying these things for a while. But as we go down this road, how do they deal with a guy who speaks truth to power like this? Listen to, it has nothing to do with Islam.
It's getting hard to keep up with all these Quran-inspired atrocities that have nothing to do with Islam. We know they have nothing to do with Islam because our politicians keep telling us that, and they are all Islamic scholars. They are, aren't they? Yes, the violence is coming exclusively from Muslims, but only because their religion, the one that has nothing to do with Islam, tells them to kill unbelievers, meaning people who don't follow the religion with a knife to our throat that has nothing to do with Islam. It's true that the more Muslims there are in a society, the more dangerous it is for gay people and Jews, but Islamic gay hatred and Islamic Jew hatred have no more to do with Islam than Quran-based Islamic terrorism. None of the violence in Islamic scripture, page after page of it, has anything to do with Islam. When Muslim terrorists quote the Quran as they're killing people, you don't seriously think that's got anything to do with the religion they follow. That could be any book they're quoting from. They just happen to pick that one because it's their religion. Duh. I mean, what are we saying here? That we should ban all books now? Let's keep it real. Of course, if you follow the religion that has nothing to do with you-know-what, then only one book really matters, and we all know which one that is. It's the book that goes out of its way to make an enemy of the rest of mankind. It's the book whose influence is currently making Western society more dangerous, less tolerant, less civilized, and less free, while we dance around the maypole and call it multiculturalism. But this slow draining away of our fundamental freedoms and cowardly betrayal of future generations has nothing to do with Islam, apart from the fact that it has everything to do with it. But that doesn't mean it has anything to do with it. Don't be so racist. The partiality of British police, who operate a brazen double standard that favours Muslim sensibilities, has no more to do with Islam than the partiality of the law itself that will jail you for burning a Quran but not a Bible, because Muslims are more important than Christians. Not that that's got anything to do with Islam. Perish the thought. The irrational, violent hatred that erupts at any depiction of the Prophet of Islam has nothing to do with the religion he founded. Nor does the fact that so many of our fearless journalists shrink like salted slugs whenever some bearded muppet shakes his fist and pretends to be offended. The fact that for years we've allowed Saudi Arabia to pour billions into funding mosques and madrasas that are now turning out fighters for the Islamic State has nothing to do with Islam. There are dozens of Sharia courts in Britain that treat women as less than fully human, are simply enforcing Islamic law. What has that got to do with Islam? The imposition of halal meat on people without their knowledge or consent, just because Muslims' religion demands it, doesn't make it Islam's fault. Their religion has nothing to do with Islam. That is so racist. Let me help you out with a little basic rule of thumb on this. None of the terrible things that are happening in the world today, inspired by Islam and mandated by Islamic scripture, have anything to do with, and I think you can finish that sentence yourself. If Islam didn't exist, those things would still be happening. Well, okay, that's not quite true. They wouldn't be happening, but that's got nothing to do with the religion of intolerance, censorship, and mealy-mouthed excuses that currently poses a real and immediate threat to our freedom. Besides, it's only a threat because of its violent fundamental values. And the violent fundamental values of Islam have nothing to do with the religion they come from. What are you trying to insinuate here? That world domination, as mandated by the Quran, somehow has something to do with Islam of all faiths? Kill unbelievers wherever you find them. Yes, Islam says that, but that doesn't mean it has anything to do with it. And if you say it does, you're being very unhelpful, and you are a racist. Checkmate. Meanwhile, back in the real world, I think it's a very desirable and healthy idea to want nothing to do with Islam. Although, in fairness, it's not Islam as such that I want nothing to do with. It's intolerance, misogyny, homophobia, anti-Semitism, racism, violence, and manufactured offence, which unfortunately rules out having anything to do with a religion that has nothing to do with itself.
Amazing. Do you know anybody who's saying it more clearly than that?
No.
And if you listen to him in the end, how is that hateful? Okay, I don't think it's wise to have anything to do with Islam. Actually, he goes on, actually, that's not quite true. What I don't want to have anything to do with is hate, misogyny, homophobia, all of that stuff, violence. That's where we all are. That's where America is. That's where the world is. That's where the average people are. That's not where our leaders are. Our leaders keep just lecturing us that it has nothing to do with Islam. We got it. We got it. Do you understand? We've listened to you now for 15 years. You, in power, have gotten us to where we are today. It ain't working, is it? Maybe you should sit down and listen to us for a while. We understand. I know you think that we're racist. I know that the people in power just think that Americans and those around the Western world are all racist. We're not. It's not 1961 anymore. Our children don't think that way. We don't think that way. We have nothing wrong with Islam. You want to live next door to us in peace? You want to be a colonialist and come over and colonize the United States of America? Then I got a problem with you. You want to come here and you want to live under the Constitution and you celebrate the values that we have and you don't mind living next door to somebody who is homosexual. You don't mind that somebody, I don't care if your wife chooses, listen to me, your wife chooses to cover herself. I don't mind if your wife chooses to say, you know what, I don't feel comfortable going out of the house without my husband or my son with me. If that's what she chooses, well, that is her choice, and it takes all kinds, and that's fine. But if you decide you want to choose for her, if you believe that female genital mutilation is a good thing, I got a problem with you. If you believe honor killing is okay because God dictates it, I got a problem with you. If you believe it's okay to stone homosexuals or discriminate against somebody else because of their religion, because of their sexuality, because of their color, I've got a problem with you. And with that, it has nothing to do with Islam. It has everything to do with the human heart and the hate that yearns to grow if anybody waters those seeds. And right now, there is one giant watering can. And it seems to have a crescent on it.